Now, good evening, everybody. Hey, welcome to Drawing Conclusions. I'm your host and quasi-artist for the evening, Randall Hampton. I'm the author and illustrator of the Little Game Master series of children's books. And I also do a few crazy little illustration things all over the interwebs, mostly centered around the tabletop gaming community. Welcome tonight. I'm so glad you could be here with us. I'm really excited because tonight we're going to be talking about something that I have been passionate about since I was a little kid. And that's only because these games were around when I was a little kid. Because that's what I grew up on. We're talking about retro gaming tonight. We're talking about gaming going back to the 8-bit and less of consoles. And to talk about all about this with me is our retro gaming specialist emeritus, Dr. Jonathan Anslow. Also known as Retronathan. He's here with us tonight. Jonathan, Dr. John, Slow Daddy-O, however you want me to refer to you, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. What an intro. Yeah, I go by many names. I guess that can be very confusing. You know, I have my Retronathan stream, which is very topical for tonight, of course. I've got my Collector, the Hordarian persona. I say persona, but it's just me, of course. And doing all my unboxings and all. You can kind of make out in the background here. I got a lot of collectibles and things. I've got retro stuff in reach, so I may pull some of that for just show and tell. You know. Yeah. Glad to be here.
Make a little adjustment here in the middle of the stream. Don't mind me. So it actually looks like I'm looking at you. That'll help.
Just don't cross the streams.
The streams have been crossed. If someone asks if you're a god, you say yes. So tonight, I'm excited because tonight we're going to be talking about retro gaming. Now, on your show, Retronathan, that's basically your bread and butter. You go in and you go into the deep dive of those games that were really the foundation, the building blocks for what we know as gaming today. You know, these are the games that the people that created Halo. These are the games that they started with when they were kids. You know what I mean? So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about why are we talking to you about retro gaming first and foremost.
So, like you, man, like I've lived it. I mean, I was excited when I can't remember where I heard you mention Atari. I feel like I'm a dying breed, that actually was weaned on Atari, the Atari 2600, wood grain finish and all, and I feel so here's a thought. And this may be blasphemy for some diehard retro enthusiasts, but I feel like some stuff, I don't know if I can go back.
Oh no?
Yeah.
Is it just that bad?
Well, I feel like, with Atari, for instance, when I was a kid, I felt enraptured for hours. I could play Pitfall and I think to completion. I think I completed it. Can you complete it? I don't think so. I don't know.
Maybe it was one of those games. I think that was one of those games that was just never ending.
Yeah, I think it was Pitfall 2 that I might have cleared. But anyway, I hate to admit it, but in some regards, I've become a little bit snobbish, and the little those extremely primitive graphics and sounds from the Atari don't hold my interest as much. I mean, maybe some River Raid, or some of the other classics. Heck, I mean, who am I to say? I mean, when I was a kid, I loved the original E.T. game that it supposedly crashed. Video game in the early 80s.
I remember the E.T. game. I do remember the E.T. game. I remember playing that. That was so like you. Yeah, I was an Atari guy from the get-go, and I remember games like Pitfall. I remember Frogger. I remember I can't remember what it was called. You were in a tank and you drive around and try and blow up the other tank.
Oh, Combat.
It was just Combat. That's what it was. Yeah, Combat. I remember Empire Strikes Back.
Oh my god!
Where you fly around trying to take out the AT-ATs. Yeah. Oh, that was such a great game. I loved that game.
Oh yeah, I mean, anything that was Star Wars, I was all over it. Being a huge Star Wars fan, and you get the one with the paddle and the lightsaber, the Jedi Academy or something.
It was amazing that actually everything's MIDI back then, obviously, but even though the sound and the music for those games was abysmal and it was really just very tinny and just they still somehow found a way to play the Star Wars that Jedi theme whenever you got like the power up and you were invincible for a few seconds. You
got to.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I like about retro games. You know, like I feel like it's like what's that saying? You know, necessity. Maybe it's sort of like necessity is the mother of invention. But you know, when you're very lo-fi and it forces you to be creative.
Absolutely.
You know, you really have to work with what you have.
Everything in your toolbox that you have. Yeah. So let me ask you this: what was the very first video game that you played?
Huh. Let me think.
Like what? This is gonna be two different questions. It's gonna be what's the first game that you remember playing, and what's the game that you remember as turning you on to video games and making you an addict for life.
You know, I feel like I want to say it's something obscure, like Lunar Lander or something like that. I feel like definitely an arcade game.
Was it an arcade game? Was it like Centipede or something like that, or Space Invaders, or?
Yeah, but I feel like there was something more obscure than that I played at a camp or a campsite or something. You know, old memories are kind of can get a little dicey, but you know, I fondly remember arcades in general. Arcades were like heaven. You know, I'd get like $5 while my mom went to go shopping, and that'd last me about a good 30 minutes or so. And
sure.
I was just, you know, I was loving it. But Defender comes to mind. I remember that game was like really just like, I don't know, man, like information overload.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you, man?
I remember we had the Atari at home, and I remember like some of my earliest memories with that was sitting down and playing Frogger with my grandma. Because my grandma loved Frogger, and she was really good at it. I remember that too. I remember watching her play and being in awe. So Frogger was one of the first games. And then I do remember going back when arcades were a thing, and I remember going to the mall by our house and sitting down and playing, you know, some of the older games, then getting into pinball, and then coming back to Centipede and Space Invaders. I want to say the game that really bit into me and made me want to keep playing video games was the Legend of Zelda. Like the first Legend of Zelda game for the NES. Like before that, I was like, oh yeah, this is fun, whatever. And I played that, and I was like, oh, this is so great. This is so fun. I have no idea what I'm doing, but it's just so fun. So that's really what I think hooked me and got me drug in. And then it went on from there.
Oh man, I was well hooked before then, but the thing I remember about Zelda, I feel like that was the first time that I felt a game really, I mean, other than Super Mario Brothers, of course, but that really encouraged exploration, you know, and like, you know, oh, this can move? What? Now I'm going to try to move everything.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And just finding, and that little, you know, sound that played whenever you discovered a hidden I mean, it was like, you know, wow.
Yeah. It's so amazing to me. Like, you're thinking back with the technology that they had, and like you said, like the necessity breeds invention, and being able to draw people in and to find a way to really spark that need for exploration, or that need to almost, in all honesty, it's almost that completionist mindset that was created way back in the 80s. You know, when you heard that sound, you're like, oh, I can find more stuff. Like, in all honesty, if you look back, Legend of Zelda, wasn't there a secret thing in almost every frame.
It was a lot.
It's like
Yeah.
it's almost all of them. There's something somewhere. It's like a little moblin saying it's a secret to everyone, or
And who could forget? I mean, that pivotal moment in the very beginning when you just go down the stairs and is here, take this. What does he
love
say?
it.
The little wizard dude.
It's dangerous to go
It's
alone.
go
Take
alone.
this.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
love
like
it.
wow, just an amazing moment. I feel like you know, so I love Metroidvanias,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
um, I feel and I was just thinking about this now as we're talking about Zelda, and I feel like in a way that Zelda embraces the some aspects of Metroidvania, even though it's not a Metroidvania. So what it does, so for instance, you need certain tools to gain access to certain parts of the map.
Yep.
That's very Metroidvania-esque.
Sure.
And I believe, did Zelda precede Metroid, or was it?
Yes, I'm pretty sure. Yes.
Yeah. And that sweet golden card. I mean, what about that? That was a nice little marketing tie-in,
That was a
right?
great marketing tool right there. Yeah.
And I'm a
How
sucker.
the heck you
Anybody who knows
doing?
me
Good to
knows
see
I'm
ya.
a sucker for marketing, man. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. If you play your cards right, I will buy whatever it is you have to sell. If it's up my alley for sure. It's
well, I
funny that
bought
you
this shirt
mentioned.
from China, so
It's funny
all
that
it took was a vintage pinball art, and I'm in.
So you mentioned Metroidvanias, and today, guys, what we're going to do is I'm going to be doing a little bit of pixel art. Now, I don't do pixel art normally. It's not something that I do a lot of, but I've done a little bit recently, and it's fun, and we have a good time doing it. And I started with a couple of sketches that I think we can have some fun playing around with. Since you mentioned Metroidvania, and since technically now it is considered retro because it's more than 25 years old. We're gonna do a picture of Alucard from Symphony of the Night.
All right.
So, but I made him a little bit like fat head, kind of like Final Fantasy sprite kind of thing. But we're gonna have fun with this. So this is one of the things that we're gonna work on tonight. If we have time, we're gonna work on this, and I think because this is the one that I really want to do. But if we have time, what I would like to do, I gotta get my grid up here. Hold on. Where's my grid? There's my grid.
Alucard backwards is Dracula.
It is. Absolutely it is. If we have time, I've got another one. Kane from Final Fantasy IV. I did a quick little sketch of him in pixel format, and it's really crazy because you get in here and you can see it's not pretty, but we're gonna make it look pretty. So we're gonna have fun with that. So we'll see if we get to that. Awesome. Pretty. If we don't, no worries.
Yeah.
So what is going on? Whoa. What is happening?
Got some hiccups.
Okay, I got weird things happening on my screen here. Okay, there we go. So what's gonna happen is I'm gonna work on these little doodles, and we're gonna have some fun looking at those and drawing and stuff like that. And while we're working on this, John and I are gonna chat about some of these retro games, some of these older games that motivated us in some of our creative influences. Definitely motivated and influenced the games that we're seeing today, for sure. And then, and kind of it's going to be a hangout tonight. We're going to talk about some of this great era of gaming and how so much development and how so much changed in the last. I mean, I've been playing games for 35 years now. I mean, 21. So yeah, 35 years is about when I was 6, 7 years old. 5, 6 years old, and I was just kind of getting into video games. That first Atari that came in, I got the Nintendo, and then I got the Game Boy. That brick of a handheld device that I thought was the coolest thing, and it was like literally if you held it in your hand for too long, you get carpal tunnel. But it was a
Yeah, speaking of the Game Boy, I was reading something recently about apparently there's some company that takes the frame of the Game Boy, they take it apart, and then piece by piece they sort of make like a shadow box art display of a gutted Game Boy, And some retro folk were getting kind of concerned about that because, yeah, they'll probably want to use up, like, I guess, dead Game Boys, but eventually, if it's popular enough, they might gut like working Game Boys if they can.
Oh
So
wow,
I was like,
that's funny that that's become a concern that they're not going to have
so yeah,
that.
that's the thing about the retro community. I'm no longer really one of them per se. I mean, I used to hold on to systems. Some people are sort of diehard, got to have the original systems and blowing the carts and everything. Not me per se, and I'm not saying that I necessarily just rely on emulation. I mean, I'll buy games, obviously, like in the eShop for the Switch or the 3DS, but yeah, or the
Let's
Xbox.
talk about that real quick, actually, because this is actually a huge thing that's happening, especially now. Games from when you and I were kids are being brought back and they're being resold and repackaged. Like, for example, Square Enix just dropped the Pixel remaster for the first 6 Final Fantasy games. Now, for me personally, that's a wet dream come true. That's the best thing I've heard in a long time because I loved those games. Like Final Fantasy 1, 4, and 6 were my favorite games of all time for the longest time. And Final Fantasy 6 is still my favorite game of all time. So to be able to play that with a cleaned up soundtrack, like the music for Final Fantasy 6, I've said on this show hundreds of times. It's the best soundtrack in video games. It is. If you disagree, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Best soundtrack in video games. To have it come back from that tinny 16-bit to a full orchestrated, because it's put out there now. Like, the fact that I can do that on my PC is a joy. It's so much fun. I'm so excited about it. How do you feel about these games being brought back to life?
Oh, I love it. Well, it's interesting. Like, for that sort of repackaged deal, I would love it if they could also include the original. Just so you can
Oh,
experience.
okay.
You know,
I
so
see. Yeah.
well, here's a like I think so lately I've been playing through the Master Chief collection, just in preparation for what is it, Halo Guardians is the next one, or whatever's the
Okay.
next Halo.
Okay.
And for at least the first game, you could toggle the original Xbox graphics on the fly.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's
Oh, that's
so
cool.
cool. And I'll tell you, there's some aspects of the original that I actually prefer. I mean, they really cleaned it up and everything, and they make it all pop and whatever. But I'm like, I don't know. Like sometimes it's just a little much. So that's what I worry about with the repackaged stuff. Like, are you gonna, just put too much eye candy on it, try to, hook in, folks that didn't grow up with it, like, try to make it something it's not per se, for you know dwindling attention spans. Um, but I'm trying to think of if there's another repackaged. I mean, they're doing. You're right. I mean, they're doing that thing, that kind of release like all the time.
It's happening a lot right now. I'm seeing it with a lot of stuff. Like they re-released a slew of the Sonic the Hedgehog games that came back out.
Yes.
Um, I know. I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, another idea, another kind of fork to this, and another path to go down is the release of the like the emulation stations they have that are basically the mini SNES, the mini NES that has
Right.
60, 75 games on it, all packaged in their prepackaged. It's basically a Raspberry Pi loaded up with ROMs that you
Yeah.
get to just sit back and play. Like, is it just those companies looking for another paycheck? Are they trying to, is it the passion of the gaming that's driving it? What's doing it?
Yeah. So
And does it matter to you? Because it's such a great idea that you want to go out and grab them anyway.
you know, I guess this goes back to I don't know, like sort of, I was talking earlier about folks that are diehards, like want to keep the original,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
console and everything. So I would much prefer actually just to use my Switch to play like classic Nintendo games or Super Nintendo games. Like they have the capability, Nintendo has the capability to include all of the prior Nintendo catalog on the Switch, and yet they don't. And I think they're really terrible about that. Like they just find new ways to uh I don't know, just repackage it or resell it. And I get it, you want to keep making money, and us retro folks will eat it up. But I don't know. So yeah, I did own like a classic NES, or whatever NES Mini, and the SNES one.
Hmm.
But I found that I wasn't. It was just more cables, and it was just, I don't know. I didn't fire it up as much, even though I love those systems. But I did find myself, you know, uh, with Nintendo Online on the Switch, that they'll give you access to some of the classic games,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm firing up, like, oh man, I remember Demon's Crest. I used to love this game,
yeah.
you know. But
I'm
yeah,
I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm always excited to see an opportunity to go back and play something that I used to play back when I was younger. So being able to go back and replay for example, be able to replay these Final Fantasy games. Now I'm a tabletop RPG guy. I'm big on story. I'm big on the RP. I'm big on finding your way through things, solving puzzles, and killing monsters, that kind of thing. So those games were my bread and butter. Those are the games that motivated me. Those are the games that turned me into the storyteller that I am today. So anytime I have an opportunity, like I played Final Fantasy. It was Final Fantasy 2 in the U.S. when it first came out on SNES. I rebought it when it was Final Fantasy 4 Advance on Game Boy Advance. I rebought it when it was on Android and iOS, and now it's coming out again for Steam, and I bought it again.
yeah, I'm guilty of just buying across different platforms. I mean, Switch is great for its portability, but sometimes I just want to play on the big screen. And yeah, I know you can dock it and everything, but so yeah, I'll buy games on Switch and PS4 or 5 and the Xbox sometimes. But so you talk about Final Fantasy and the soundtrack earlier, or the score.
Yeah,
I'll tell you one that knocked my socks off. Okay,
please.
so okay. Man, I had a TurboGrafx 16.
Okay.
Okay, not many people are familiar with it. I actually have the
I remember
mini
Turbo
version of
Graphics.
that. Oh, you do know? Okay,
I
good.
remember. Yep, I remember. That was Bonk.
Yes, Bonk's Adventure.
Yeah.
Yes, and Legendary Axe and
Yep.
Blazing Lasers, and some good little games on those little credit card looking things. And so anyways, so this was like, again, I talked about being a sucker for marketing. So I remember they were advertising like these big pixel games like China Warrior, which was horrible, side scrolling, just kind of duck and punch and whatever. But it was leagues better than the graphics and sounds that you got on your NES. And they're like, yeah, this is the 16-bit generation, and they were trying to beat Sega to the punch, I think. And it turns out, I think it was really just two 8-bit processors working in parallel. Anyway, so I had asked for the TurboGrafx CD add-on, and just thinking that was going to be like a game changer, and in many ways it was. I did have the original like Street Fighter on there, which was just kind of garbage, but the original game was kind of garbage, so it was kind of emulating that pretty well. With the garbled, it had its own charm. It had its garbled speech, like can't even like understand what they're saying half the time, but you're like, whoa, there's speech. I think I
Yeah.
understood what they just said. So anyway, a game changer for me was there was a CD game that came out called Ys Book 1 and 2.
Yes.
Let me tell you, man,
Yeah.
the soundtrack was like CD quality sound, which was unheard of for,
For
I
a
mean,
video game.
hardly even for arcades, but for a home system. I mean, and then they had like pseudo animated kind of intros, and I was sucked in. Like the gameplay was kind of janky, and that you just kind of like walk into people to attack, and that was kind of weird. But I absolutely loved it. And now that wasn't my first RPG though. I mean, you talk about um, Final Fantasy. I played Final Fantasy 2 on the SNES.
Yeah.
Just like it was like an $80 game at the time, and I'm like, that must denote quality. So let me buy this, or beg my parents to buy it for
No,
me.
wait. Which one are we talking about? Are we talking about Final Fantasy 2 or Final Fantasy 4?
Well, I think it was technically Final Fantasy 4, but
Yeah.
released as 2. Yes,
Yes. Yes.
and so that's the one you were talking about earlier, correct? Or no, you were talking. Yes. Oh my God, the absolutely like blew me away.
Yeah.
I had never played an RPG like that. It's more like the Zelda, like action RPG.
Yeah.
So the turn-based battles and everything
Yep.
was like, I'm like, I thought it would be boring, but it hooked me in.
There's a
It
lot
was
of
so,
strategy. It was a lot of strategy. It was a lot of great story. The music in Final Fantasy IV was fantastic. And if you want to know something really cool, the song from one of the songs from Final Fantasy IV, "Theme of Love" by Nobuo Uematsu,
Mhm.
is still taught and used as a graduation piece at at academies in Japan. Like that's a song that you have to learn how to play, how to conduct. Like it's like a part of the culture. That's how good the music for these video games was.
I tell you, one of the things I love about, and I'm no musician by any stretch, but I do appreciate and love music. And one of the things I love are like musical themes that
Yep.
literally that get like reiterated throughout the series. And another place where you see this. So there's this guy Gordy Hobb that he does the compositions for the Star Wars games,
Okay.
and and he comes up with original stuff, but obviously he's going to use the DNA of
Sure.
John
Of John
Williams'
Williams. Yeah.
amazing scores,
Right.
that we all know and love. But he does it so well, and he may actually be poised to become the next John Williams, if that's not blasphemy to say that, but
It is, but I'll listen.
we'll allow it. Um,
I'll hear what you have to say about it.
yeah, so just, I mean, music is very integral to the experience, just like with Star Wars, right? I mean, that's part of what makes it so appealing. What it
Sure.
accentuates the experience. And when you're like fighting a big old boss battle, in an RPG, and it's playing this like epic, like apocalyptic type of theme. I mean, yeah, you're in it. You know.
Right.
So on Holiday was mentioning about achievements and whatnot, as a reason for kind of moving around, and I get that. I still haven't come around to the whole like PlayStation achievements. I've always been an Xbox person anyway. I mean, no, I take that back. I'm an equal opportunist. Like I'll, usually own multiple systems because again, I get sucked in and I'm like, that system exclusive. I want to play that. So,
Sure.
um,
That's now. Let's talk a little bit about that.
mhm.
Back in the day, it was almost entirely system exclusive. I mean, because you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying? Like games
Yeah,
didn't cross pollinate.
yeah,
Like for the most part, a software developer would basically strike up a contract with one platform or another, and that's where they would get their gravy, right?
yeah.
Like,
So and of course, I think there's I mean, I'm trying to think of. So on the NES there was Tenjin, and they tried to bring like Sega games onto Nintendo, like I think Afterburner, and I want to say
Okay.
Shinobi, and I don't know. They had a big like lawsuit about because Nintendo was very like notorious for like you've got to use like our cartridges, and very like sticklers for the format and everything. And Tengen
Sure.
trying to get around that, and that's why I think like their version of Tetris is considered more valuable on the collector's market. I believe I could be talking out of my ass, but
That's a whole nother subject that I want to talk about eventually. We'll talk about collectors and being able to pick up buying retro gaming now, getting into retro gaming that way, and how much more how difficult it's becoming just because of the
oh gosh,
cost.
yeah. So as you probably heard, there was the copy of that was of what was it, Super Mario 64, that was professionally graded and assigned a 100 perfect grading, and fetched I think $1.5 million.
That's insane.
Isn't that insane? I mean, here's a game you buy for like $60 back in the day, and
That's so crazy.
yeah. So you talk about being harder to get. I talk about this because it was a huge score for me. So I want to say about maybe a little over 10 years ago or so. I was visiting my buddy in San Diego, which is a great connection because he's a fellow geek, and we would get our Comic-Con ticks and check it out. But um, he was working one day, and I was just kind of exploring San Diego by foot, and I happened upon a Goodwill type of store. It may have been Goodwill or something else, Salvation Army, I don't know. And I saw in the case, little glass case by the registers, there was a Nintendo game, and I was like, "Oh yeah, can I see that?" Uh, Turns out it was, oh gosh, what's the name of it? Zombie Nation.
Okay.
Super rare game, and they're selling it for like $6 or something. I'm like, yeah. And I have it to this day, and I'll probably hold on to that one for a while. Although over the years, I've just kind of liquidated here and there, and some of that is just for space purposes. And when you're newly married and living in a little condo and can't bring all your systems from, I tell you, man, I had Atari 2600, the NES, I had Nintendo, Super Nintendo, TurboGrafx 16, Sega Genesis, all the PlayStations, all the
You just
Xboxes.
had all the toys, man.
Yeah, portables, man. I had the Sega Nomad back in the day. Used to love that. You could play like actual Sega cartridges in there.
Oh, that's
Uh,
cool. Yeah.
Crazy battery life, but I'd always plug it in and just that was really cool. You could just hold it in your hand and play it on the floor.
Sure.
As far as Game Boy goes, I don't know if I ever had a Game Boy. Um,
Wow.
I think it just kind of gave me a headache to look at,
That's. I
and
mean, yeah.
like I waited until they kind of bumped it up to the Game Boy Advance. That was my jam.
But Game Boy Advance was a great system. It was a great decision. They basically took a Super Nintendo and put it in the palm of your hand. Is
Oh
really what
yeah,
it was.
yeah. Especially when they had the Game Boy Advance SP, which is like this perfect little square. It was so portable, and they improved the lighting, and I think the display was a bit crisper or something. And man, I love the hell out of that system. Now I don't, as far as the collecting and everything, I don't feel compelled to like, oh man, I missed that and I got to go get it again or nothing like that. I kind of do, but no, not enough to rebuy it, but I don't fault people that do though. I mean, that's cool. If, I'm definitely a stickler for nostalgia, and that's a big part of my collecting and my gaming.
Sure.
I mean, it's not to say that I only play retro, but I love it. I mean, that's what I grew up with.
So I've kind of gone away from consoles anymore. I can't justify shelling out $500 every few years for the next PlayStation or for the next Xbox, whatever comes out. I can't justify that. It's just, to me, it doesn't make sense. I've gone completely PC, but I'm still holding on to a few things. Like, I still have my old Game Boy Advance. I still have the slim PS2 because it was backwards compatible. I can still play old school PlayStation 1 games on it. So I still have in my possession Suikoden 1 and 2, and I will never get rid of them.
Yeah, and you kickstarted the spiritual successor to that, right?
I did. I was a huge Suikoden fan, and technically that's considered retro now too. And if anyone from Konami is listening, put Suikoden on Steam. Do it. Put it on any console. It was they released it to, I think, the PlayStation Store. But you could never get all of the games on one console. It's like two of them were available on the Vita, some or on the PSP. Some were available on PS3, but none of them were all available on the same console. So it was impossible to have any kind of traction.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, do it. And I know Konami. The only thing they're doing now is like online casino games and stuff like that. That's basically what they're creating now, which is unfortunate. But you still have a license to this thing.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen, right?
You can go in and you can very easily retrofit these games to play on Steam. It is not difficult.
Oh, tell me about it.
And you could make a fortune.
Yeah, like why not just include it as part of like a Konami mega mix,
a mega bundle, man. Do it.
Yeah.
Charge $75 for a bunch of Konami games.
Well, they've done it before, like with they did it with the Sega is on Steam, which can interface with the VR. So you can walk in this retro-looking room and pick up the cartridge and put it. That's so cool, man! Like, I love,
hilarious.
Like that. That's a super cool. Like I that's one of my pet peeves. When you want to talk about collections, if they're gonna get lazy with it, and just like dump the ROMs and be like done with it. But if they're including like, concept art and just like. I don't know, like maybe failed ideas or just interviews, whatever, man. Like just try to spice it up a little bit.
It's funny to me because there's so much potential in retro gaming, especially with. I mean, if you think about the people that are really interested in retro gaming, it's the people that played the games when they first came out. And those people that played the games when they first came out, they're adults now. They have jobs. They make a living. They have all of this extra income that they can just spend on whatever. Why would you not take advantage of that? Like Nintendo is. Nintendo has for quite a bit. PlayStation. I mean, I feel like PlayStation is getting better about releasing older games through the through the PlayStation Store and stuff like that. You can I think in a lot of them you can still get like what do they call, like the greatest hits. Like the PS1 greatest hits and stuff like that, the ones that sold like 1 million copies or whatever.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I would be remiss if I didn't mention one of my favorite retailers, Limited Run Games. Are you familiar with them? I'm
not familiar with Limited Run.
So their mission is to keep games physical. And thing I love about that is, modern games, we're moving so much into digital streaming, like vaporware, essentially. Like, it's suddenly we decide not to support it anymore. And I hope you downloaded it. And even if you did, it might be glitchy because you got to be online and there's no, it's just, there's a lot of problems that introduces. Don't get me wrong. I have like tons of digital stuff. It's convenient and I get that, but I don't know what happens when the internet's not working or, like you just want a good old physical. And I love that experience of just kind of like opening it up, that new game smell. There's actually, ooh, there's a manual. Like that's novel. Um, you know, you
That's
know,
so
like,
funny, but that's so true. Like games now when they come when you open the box and if you look at even if you buy a physical copy of a game I got Breath of the Wild for me and my son to play together. There's no booklet in there. It doesn't have a book. It's literally a plastic case in the game. That's it. When
just
I
sad.
when I first bought got the original Final Fantasy game, it came with a novel of an instruction booklet. Like it was literally like instructions on how to equip characters, how to do this, how to move around, how you save the game. But then it was like almost like a video game guide for the first chunk of the game.
Well, if
You
you
know,
want to go like super retro, so some of those PC early RPGs, like people would get graph paper and like
oh
map out,
yeah,
like like no, that was
Ultima.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I never played like so. I never really had a PC, back in the day. I just it just wasn't in the budget. But I'll tell you, man, like a buddy of mine had an Apple IIe, I think, and we would play some games on that. Karateka was the one I remember. And I remember the oh gosh, what was the one I had? Oh, I played that was I guess kind of like an homage to the Ultima series, but it's called Legacy of the Ancients.
Okay.
And that was actually I had a Commodore 64, but mostly for gaming,
Okay.
and rudimentary like programming. But man, I loved the heck out of that game.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember there used to be like text adventure games like Zork, and
Yep.
those were like all the rage. And there was one that I adored that started as a text adventure game and then got into more of a traditional point and click kind of game. And it was Labyrinth, modeled after the
Yeah.
movie. So, heck, I even liked, there was a Howard the Duck game. Because for some reason I
No.
liked that dumb movie.
I remember that flick. That flick was terrible.
Oh, it was
Oh, it
so,
was so bad.
oh, I loved it as a kid though. I'm
It was
like,
great.
this is wacky, man. Cool. They made this for me. And it was George Lucas. I don't know if I knew that as a kid, but I don't know.
That's so
And maybe
funny.
I had a little crush on Leah Thompson, or
Oh, who didn't? Come on.
yeah,
Who
yeah.
didn't?
Which is so weird though. Like my little kid brain didn't like think it was weird that there's this hot gal like making out with a duck person.
Nope. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't compute. That's
Yeah, it's like okay, cool. They love each other. That's all right. Gosh, I haven't watched that flick in forever though. I'm like afraid to. I might need to watch it with my bad movie club.
yeah.
So we can
That would be one to tackle with that. That's not.
yeah, because I don't know how else I'd get through it. I don't know. You need to just kind of try to keep people's spirits up and riff it. But
You know what? The bad movies, like great bad movies, are another topic for another day, and that's something I'll probably have to have you on for that. We can talk about some of the best bad movies. Like,
oh, absolutely,
but,
absolutely. We'll table that one. We'll keep it retro today.
let's let's go into a little bit of retro gaming. Like we touched on it at the very beginning, going to the arcade. And there's something about standing at the cabinet. Even like if it's the original like Pac-Man, sitting down and being able to getting all those little pellets and killing the ghosts, whatever. I remember the one game that absolutely floored me when I walked into the arcade, and I remember me and my two brothers and my dad dropped I don't know how much money to beat was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game where you could be each of the four turtles.
Yes.
And it was the two screens that were butted up, you know what I mean, to make it the big. It was like the two
four-player,
TVs,
like,
the 4-player cabinet.
Yeah.
And the four of us sat there and we would just pump quarters into this thing. That was one of my favorite memories as a kid. It's me and my three brothers and my dad going up to the arcade to beat Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
That's the original multiplayer. Man.
Yeah.
You just had games like one of the first, so that's like the side-scrolling beat 'em up, and
Streets of Rage type stuff.
yeah,
Or well, go back even further than that. Go back to like Bad Dudes or Double Dragon.
yes, I was gonna say Double Dragon, and which was like it's so weird how how innovative it was at the time, but the idea of like I don't know, picking up weapons and using it was like, whoa, that's a neat interface, and it's just it's so weird how I don't know that's one of the cool things about being a retro gamer, I think, is that we have perspective, and we were just brought up on things that were just the best at what technology could bring at the time, but then we've seen it evolve over the years, and it's
do you think
go ahead.
Do you think younger players absolutely take what they have for granted, the technology that they have?
I think so. And what your question makes me think of a father who, and I'm sure there's been plenty, who basically would not let their kids play modern day games until they played through like a selection of the classics.
That's amazing.
And I'm like, hey, it's not such a terrible idea. Just to, like, I think there's sort of a critical period where like, because if they've had access to like YouTube or whatever, they've already seen like videos of like awesome modern tech games, so if you could shield them and then have them and see it through their eyes, and I don't know, like it's kind of a cool idea, but also I guess kind of a little cruel.
Is it though? I mean, it's not. I don't want to say it's cruel. I mean,
yeah, I don't know.
I love the idea of having that education at home, because there aren't too many courses or classes that you can take, especially K through 12, that's going to take you down that rabbit hole and show you the and I know Zach, our fellow GLU member here, would love to change that, and he would love to. He's all about bringing video games into the classroom, and he would love to see that grow and change and adapt. But is that our job as parents? Do we make those introductions?
Well, you talk about games in the classroom. I mean, one of the originals, Oregon Trail, man.
Like, I played the crap out of Oregon Trail when I was in my little computer lab when they were trying to teach me how to type.
Yeah, like that game was hard. Like random stuff happened and you lost your whole like carriage in the crossing the river, and
man, I kept getting dysentery. Yeah, I kept.
They actually they released that fairly recently on like a little portable electronic, kind of emulating the old electronics of yore. And yeah, I could play the whole game on it.
Holiday, you never beat Oregon Trail. You never made it all the way to Oregon.
I feel like I did. I don't know.
I did. I know I did at least once. I know I did at least once. It was no easy task. I'm not begrudging you or belittling you for not doing it. It was not an easy task, especially depending on when you played the game. Like if you had a computer at home back then and you were playing it at home, you had all the time in the world. But if you were at school in a computer lab, you only had like a half hour, 45 minutes. Right. You couldn't save your progress back then.
This is true. And that makes me think of, and On Holiday was agreeing here, talking about, hadn't heard about Oregon Trail in some time and most likely didn't finish. And I think that was true of most of us. But I just thought about another kind of annoying aspect of retro gaming, because you mentioned saving. Well, that was an innovation. Before Zelda, with the battery in the cart that allowed for saving, we had to copy down these weird charts and
the passcodes.
Yeah.
The passcodes for Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. When you finally got past, Bald Bull 2.
Oh my gosh. Bald Bull. Man, he was toughie. So wow, Mike Tyson's punch. So now that just made me think of something else I want to ask you.
Yeah.
So I don't know if my gaming skills have declined over the years. I mean, likely so, reaction time down and stuff like that.
Sure.
All these youngins, just, mopping the floor with me. But I like to think that back in the day, I had the patience and the dedication to, stick with a game until I beat it, and sometimes with some assistance, like the Konami code, getting your 20 lives in Contra.
Oh, yeah.
But so one of the, two accomplishments other than, okay, I beat Zelda. I don't know if I beat the second run through.
The Master Quest, yeah.
Beat Mike Tyson and Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. I beat Castlevania. That was a tough one.
The original Castlevania is hard.
Hard
game.
Yeah. There's no Konami code for that. But so, dude, what are some of your gaming achievements from back in the day?
Original achievements from back in the day, I would say, gosh. Some of the big... What were some of the big ones? The ones that I always knew I could...
Did you ever beat Contra?
I beat Contra, yes. I have beat Contra.
With the 20 lives.
I would say beating level 9-5 in Tetris on the first try.
Wow.
I've done that.
Okay.
That was for like on the Game Boy, and now where you selected 9-5, and that's when you got the big spaceship that took off.
Huh.
No,
this was on the Game Boy?
On the Game Boy, the original Game Boy Tetris. See. You could play through it. When you played through it, if you beat like level 9-3 or 9-2 or something like that, you got the little tiny little spaceship that went off. And then from 9-0 to 9-5, they would add like little, whenever you beat it, they had little dancers that would sing, they'd play the song, and the little dancers would play, right? Huh. And this is in Type B, so where you select the levels and you get through it. Type A, you just go for as long as you can, and that's however far you can get. Type B, 9-5. If you beat 9-5, you got take the 25 down to 0. It was like a giant like Discovery like space shuttle on the big rocket boosters, everything, and that blasted off. And that's how you knew that you beat the game.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
That was always one of the fun ones when I was a kid. Yeah.
But even just the idea of beating a game, though, that was a relatively new development, right? Because going back again to the Atari, it wasn't necessarily about beating a game, although there was Adventure, which is a very rudimentary RPG where you fight duck-looking dragons with a sword that looks like a arrow. But I remember playing that one But yeah, I mean, just beating a game, and I loved that feeling of especially if there was some kind of reward, it of course it sucked if it was just congratulation, end, it's all misspelled and what, that's underwhelming. But if you got a nice little cinematic, I remember, I think Contra was a cinematic of the helicopter leaving the island
and it blowing up or something.
Yeah. Which that was cool. That was a nice little touch. And
beating Metroid.
Oh yes.
And then figuring out the new code with Samus in her Zero suit in the original Metroid.
Wow.
That was cool.
That. But I mean, I beat it, but I never did the Samus.
The Zero suit, yeah. There was a code that you could come back and put in the way she wouldn't be in the big armor. She would just be in her Zero suit, which I thought was cool.
Well, this actually brings up another thing, another aspect of classic gaming, retro gaming. So back in the day, pre-internet, right? We had to rely on manuals, strategy guides,
or the
Nintendo Power.
The call-in.
Call-in, yeah.
You could call in and ask for advice. Oh, gosh.
For sure.
My
Yeah,
parents
for a fee, right? Like,
for a fee, it was like $1.25 a minute or something like that. And if you went over 1 minute, you got charged another $1.25.
gosh.
I remember my parents getting a phone bill one month, and they were
Oh
not
my
happy.
days. Hey, at least you weren't, calling the party line or something.
Yeah, it's like, what
That
is
was
this?
later.
What are you calling? Like, it's Nintendo Power, I swear.
Oh man, I believe they talked about that on. Are you familiar with? So there was a book written called Console Wars. It's actually a really good book. Well, I say that and I didn't finish because I have ADHD, and I'm like, oh, it sits on my side table for months. But
Right.
I got through a good portion of it. It was really cool to get the inside scoop about the 16-bit wars. How Sega basically dethroned Nintendo through crazy marketing tactics. And so, anyways, I mentioned that because they actually released a series based on it on I think it's Paramount Plus, and in it they actually make mention of this guy who I believe he became a programmer, but he started out working one of those telephone lines,
Oh, that's funny.
and oftentimes it's like they didn't know, and they just kind of had to you know kind of wing it, and because I think they were also play testers, I want to say, but
Probably,
anyways,
yeah.
that would have been a dream though, huh? Like being able to work for
A video game. Yeah,
Nintendo.
you worked for a video game company. That was every kid's dream back then. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like I remember actually when I was a kid, in the Atari days, um, I want to say, so on the cartridge they had the address for Atari, and it was like Sunnyvale, California, or something. So I remember I had some kind of idea for a video game, and I'm like, let me send this to them. For all I know, they made it. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what my idea was, but
That's
I was
funny.
like, I think this would be cool, and I was like drawing stuff, and but I remember they did have some interesting contests, like where I want to say, what was it, Sword Quest?
Okay.
Um, I don't know. I didn't really play those games, but I remember hearing about it. But
Let me ask you something right now. What is your
yeah,
favorite game? What is your favorite game, like, period, right now? This moment in time. And everything that you've ever put your hands on, what is your favorite game that you've ever played?
man, man, that's a
Like, gun to your head, you pick one game you can play for the rest of your life.
hmm, man, that's
It's hard. It's not an easy
really
question.
hard. That's like picking a child, a favorite child. Like I don't know, man. Whew, I mean, because it's kind of like your favorite song too. Like it depends on your mood, depends on like there's
Yeah,
different genres,
for
and
sure.
wow, that is just a tough question.
But is there one that you can always go back to, no matter what kind of mood you're in? You're like, you know what? Yeah, I can play this game.
Well, so if you want to go for like just replayability and simplicity, of course Tetris, right?
I love
Like you could
Tetris. I
just
love
you could
that
just
game.
play that infinitely. Like there's always more lines to clear, and but um I don't know, man. Like I told you, like with Atari games, generally speaking, I don't really have an urge to go back per se.
Okay,
And
that's
um,
totally fair.
but one of my favorite systems ever, and maybe this has a lot to do with just where I was in my life. I was like, I think it was 16 when it came out, the Super Nintendo.
Okay.
And it was a proud moment for me because I was working as a lifeguard at the local pool, and I made enough money, and I just plunked it down at the electronics boutique, and
Babbage's or whatever it was.
yeah, and then they hand over this console that actually came with a game. That
It
was another,
came with a game.
you know, like novel concept. But I remember loving the heck out of Super Mario World. I played the heck out of that. But man, I don't know that I can answer your question though. Like other than Tetris, like that would be one that I could play like anytime. What about you, man?
Favorite game of all time is still to this day Final Fantasy VI. It is
Hmm.
my favorite game of all time. The music is amazing. The story is great. The character development is amazing. The art, the concept art. I can't tell you how many books I've bought from Dark Horse that just talk about the concept art and the process, and basically just rehashing Yoshitaka Amano's concept art for Final Fantasy series. But Final Fantasy VI, so good. But to me, that's the perfect game. It's so good for what it was at the time. It's the perfect game. I'm so excited to see what the Pixel remaster is. I'm nervous, but I'm excited.
Well, so I don't know, man. Like I'm just thinking about it some more. Like I've always been a fan of side scrollers, like platformers.
Dude, Super Metroid is so good.
So good.
Super Metroid is such a freaking good game.
Yeah, and I was going into the Symphony of the Night territory.
Symphony of the Night, and I'm working on it. That's up there as one of my favorite games.
It's so amazing. The score.
Again, the music makes it makes such a huge impact on the game.
It really does. Like that. That was the pinnacle of Castlevania, basically. I mean, that was the best Castlevania like in the series.
I do not disagree with you. I've played some of the other Castlevanias that have come out since.
Yeah.
And I don't dislike them, like the Lords of is it Lords of Shadow?
Oh, right.
Is that what it's called? Something like that.
So.
For PlayStation 2 and stuff like that. I mean, I enjoyed them, but it did not have the same effect on me that Symphony of the Night did.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lost Castlevania game. They were developing it for the Dreamcast, and I
do remember this.
Yeah, I
do remember hearing about this.
They had some gameplay a picture of, I guess, what was gameplay, and I think you could play, like, some editors at the time I think got to play a little bit of it, but they just canned it. I think so that's an interesting era of video games, when they stopped really relying on 2D art and animation and moving into the 3D realm.
Yeah,
it was a very problematic kind of transition. It started with essentially PS1, and they did a pretty good job, I mean, I must say, with what they had. And I mean, talk about a game changer, man. What about like Sony acquiring Square from Nintendo? Well,
yeah,
they switched because Nintendo was doubling down on cartridges.
Yep.
They're like, people, that's what they think of when they think of video games at home. And then meanwhile, Square's like, we're making a game that's going to be like 20 cartridges. That's not viable.
That's not going to work. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're like, we're embracing the new tech, the CD-ROM, and good working with you. See you later.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, what were they going to do though?
Yeah,
I mean, they had a product that was spanning. Well, it even spanned 3 compact discs.
Yeah, well, Sony was smart in that regard, in that they were in that game. They were like in the new media game, because if they make the media that sticks, people got to pay money to put their games on the media. And they made money back that way. Now we all know that they lose money typically on consoles. They get it back through the software. But PlayStation days, that was all the jagged edges, and those games are pretty hard to go back to, but I do love what's that.
There's a few that I can still go back and play from like the PS1 era. I can still go back and play Metal Gear Solid.
Yes.
I can still go back and play Final Fantasy VII. I can still go back and play Well, Suikoden 1 and 2 are amazing on that. And it's the cute little sprites still, so it's a different format. They didn't go full 3D for those.
Yeah.
What was it called? Twisted Metal.
Yes.
The original
Fun game.
Twisted Metal was so fun. The Tony Hawk games on the original PlayStation. Those looking back at those now, those are rough. Those are really rough.
For sure.
But they were still at the time they were so fun. The music, again, they had the best soundtracks.
So I got a hidden gem for you.
Okay.
And it's a hidden gem for, I think, the main reason it released at the same time as Metal Gear Solid.
Okay.
And so it's a little game called Silent Bomber. Did you ever play that?
I don't think so.
I loved that game. And the only reason I got to play it was on a demo disc. And that was another cool thing from back in the day. You could buy like magazines that come with demo discs, like the PlayStation magazine and stuff like that. So it was a great way to get demos. Now, of course, it's digital and everything. But so Silent Bomber, it had a really cool interface where, how do I describe it? It was sort of like it was the future, and you were like running around and you'd shoot these bombs that attached to, these mechas and robots and whatnot, and then you could detonate them later. And it was such a cool gameplay concept, and but it just got lost in the mix, But I want to say, was it Bandai that made that one? I can't remember.
Oh man, there's a lot of hidden gems from the PS1 era that never really got the traction that I think they probably should have deserved.
Yeah.
But there are absolutely cult communities for a lot of these games.
For sure.
And again, going back, just like you said, going back and trying to find some of these games now, if you go onto eBay or wherever and try and find them, it's impossible. Like, I've been trying to complete my collection and getting Suikoden 1 through 5. Suikoden 3, 4, and 5 online. Like, if you'd want to try and get Suikoden 5 for less than $150, good luck.
Wow.
It's just a PS2 game. But they stopped making it. They stopped producing it. So there's a finite amount of those games out there now.
Yeah, it's only getting harder and harder, and I feel like since now I'm not tracking the market too closely, but I feel like since quarantining and COVID and everything, it's only just made it that much more.
I believe it.
Like people returning to gaming, it's because it's that what do you do when you're at home? It's like you game.
Subscription services went through the roof. Gaming went through the roof. If you had stock in Zoom before the pandemic, you were you ended up
careful, they might be listening.
Right. Yeah, it is whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, this is so ridiculous.
Well, you want to talk other gems like on the PS1? I remember finding which one was it? Actually, also at a thrift store. Now you can't find any games at thrift stores. They know better.
Yeah,
they're like, you might get lucky every once in a while, and I love like searching for treasures, hidden treasure. But you go into like where they sell movies, and then they just kind of haphazardly put like an original Xbox game on there, and you're like, oh, awesome! And then you take it out, and it's like FIFA 01 or something, or
yeah.
But I found. Have you ever heard of Tomba?
No.
Now Tomba was developed by I want to say they called themselves Whoopee something, and they were ex like Konami or Capcom developers or something like. So they knew their stuff, and they created this 2.5D platformer that was a wacky sense of humor. You were like a cave person, and you could like sort of jump into the environment, and it was very groundbreaking, like way ahead of its time. But it didn't really take off. It was just too crazy, But I feel like that game, and it had a sequel even. It was popular enough, I guess, to have a sequel. But I feel like those games would probably be a pretty penny, now. But um, yeah, so gosh. So you were saying earlier, as far as like what you've held on to, you've got your Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, I have a few things. I don't have a lot anymore. I pawned off a lot when I was just moving from college back home
Yeah.
and all that stuff. Lost a lot of treasures that look back now and I'm like, oh.
Mm-hmm.
But I still have some original Game Boy cartridges lying around that will
Okay.
actually play in my GBA.
Yes.
I've got a ton of GBA games like whatever re-release of Final Fantasy they had. I picked that up. The Breath
Yeah.
of Fire series, I picked those up. All the Mario games that they re-released, so the different Mario World games. That was always so fun to replay.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And that was before they re-released them on Switch or on I guess it would have been like the GameCube
3DS. Oh yeah.
or any of those. That was
Yeah.
a fun thing. GameCube. When the GameCube
Oh,
came out, I remember they released a collection of Zelda games on one of those tiny little discs. Like it was
I have
legitimately.
it.
It was the original Zelda, Zelda 2,
Yeah.
Ocarina of Time,
Wait a minute.
and
Uh,
something else. There's a few of them on there, but it was amazing. You
uh,
got a DS holiday, so I can still play GBA games. Net totals. Yeah, yeah. The DS can still play GBA games. Is it? I think it's just the DS Lite, though, isn't it? I don't know. I might be wrong.
well, I couldn't find it. Actually, I have the. Oh, and you'll get this. This was another great score. So my sister was at what is on holiday saying you gave your Game Boy Advance to your cousin when you were younger and now you regret it. I know, right? Nintendo DS, still a great system. A lot
Yeah,
of in the backwards compatibility. Yeah,
yeah,
so
for
that's
sure.
awesome. I still have some Game Boy Advance games. I want to say Castlevania Portrait, not Portrait of Ruin, maybe the first Game Boy Castlevania Advance, but
Aria of Sorrow.
no, it was earlier. It was a black um, label on it. Anyway, um, gosh, I think I have a Gradius collection.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, and oh, I do have a Game Boy game, GTA 2, I think, for Game Boy. um, so I didn't see my I was saying earlier. Okay, so my sister was at a thrift store and she's like phoning me and she's like, "Yo, there's these retro games. Like, you want them?" I'm like, "Yeah, buy them all." And it was like Eternal Darkness for GameCube.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
it was the Zelda collection for GameCube that had the two different versions of Ocarina, not Ocarina.
Majora's Mask.
Thank you, Majora's Mask on there. Um, oh man, it was a score, man. I got like I want to say five or six like really awesome GameCube games for like $10 or something crazy. It's nuts. So, but when I was down there rummaging in my drawer, I have drawers with random cool retro crazy stuff, and this isn't retro, but it's an homage to something retro. I got this from Limited Run Games. I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of reflecting poorly, but this was a
Oh,
physical.
Panzer Dragoon. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So for the Switch, as you can see, um, this was Limited Run Games.
Wow.
They re-released it, sort of a classic retro
That's
edition,
awesome.
and made it look like a Sega Saturn.
That's hilarious.
Dude,
That's
I
so.
I'm
That's commitment that they went back with and just did and redid the packaging even.
I'm a sucker for this stuff, man. Like it's just sitting in a drawer, but I love it. It's sitting in a drawer because my room's just so saturated right now.
Sure.
My wife gets on me all the time about that, and I'm working on it. I put some stuff on eBay. We were talking about Metroid earlier. I had some Metroid amiibos. I put those.
Oh.
Yeah, I still have some though, so I'm not completely, going through everything. But these ones were fetching quite a bit, so I'm like, all right, if I'm gonna sell something, let me sell something, make it worthwhile. It was it's a double pack, and it had like Samus Aran like kneeling down, and then the
Sure.
Metroid breaking out of like the containment chamber or something. But um, so on holiday saying, I remember Animal Crossing had a feature where you could plug your GBA into the GameCube to visit an island. That was so exciting, groundbreaking at the time. Absolutely. Now, I never was an Animal Crossing guy,
I
but
wasn't either, and I still
you
didn't.
know,
I still haven't with the new one. I just
yeah.
it
Well, the
didn't.
new one, like it sold like hotcakes,
Oh yeah.
man. And talk about like it dropped at the perfect time. People are like, again at home, like, and you need something comforting. Like this is about like making friends and you know,
Yeah.
uh, pimping out your island or whatever and jazzing it up. And I don't know, like I could see the appeal. But I did always, on a similar note, like I wanted to play Stardew Crossing, or Stardew Valley,
Stardew
rather.
Valley.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
like conflating the
You
two.
know
Yeah.
what? I picked up Stardew Valley when it was on like the Steam summer sale or something. It was like $3 or something like that. I picked it up and I started playing it a little bit, and I couldn't get into it.
Oh, okay.
Like it's one of those like it's a resource management game, and you're just
Yeah.
building your farm and so some of those games I could not get into it.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think I did start playing it, and I'll tell you, one of my problems is I have such a crazy backlog of games. Like that's part of the reason why I like to stream. Like it's not, I don't edit my streams or anything. Like it's nothing special. I'm just playing my games, and I might comment on stuff here and there. But um, it's yeah, I'm really selling myself here on, hey, check out
you're
my
fine.
content. But yeah, but it's mostly an excuse for me to actually get through my backlog.
Yeah.
And Retronathan, of course, is going to be more retro type of theme. But now I don't just play retro, as you may or may not know. Like I like to also play games that emulate retro. That like you were saying
Oh,
earlier. Yeah.
okay.
So
So that like that have that super pixelated feel to them. So like games like Loop Hero and what's it called? Children of Morta, things like that.
yeah. So like it's like you were saying earlier. Developers grew up playing these
Yeah.
games, and now they want to make the kind of games that they enjoy when they. So and so I'll play. So like Streets of Rage, the newest one, 4. I played that on a stream, and it's very updated graphics and everything, but still that same retro side scrolling,
Yeah.
move right, beat up everything on the screen. Okay, move right again, pick up chicken
Fantastic.
off the road and get some meat, you know.
That's amazing. Oh,
uh, on holiday was just saying Stardew is great. It's Animal Crossing combined with a farming simulator
yeah.
combined with a fighting game. You make it. I mean, that's yeah. I'll give it another chance. I definitely want to play it.
I couldn't get into it. I just couldn't do it for whatever reason. It didn't speak to me personally. That's fine. I know a lot of people love it, and a lot of
Yeah,
people get a lot of joy out of it. That's freaking amazing. I'm glad they do.
for sure.
Yeah.
Your
Uh,
drawing's looking pretty fabulous, man.
I think Alucard is pretty well set now.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
looking
I'm gonna
great.
I'm gonna I'm gonna add in one more layer, and I'm just gonna fill it in with like a medium gray, just so I can kind of see if there's any like spots that I missed that I gotta go in and clean up. And yep, there's one down there. All right.
Oh, interesting. Learning the tricks of the trade here.
Yeah, there's a couple little easy, quick and easy ways, and actually having him on a background like this is probably not a bad idea, actually.
Like I was wondering, being a like I mean I'm definitely not an artist, but I mean I used to dabble back in the day and do little sketches here and there, and but I was wondering what that setup on your hand is, where like
Oh, the
two.
glove.
Yeah, was
So I work on a Wacom Cintiq, which is basically just a giant tablet that it's basically a monitor that I can draw on, and the glove just helps my hand slide across, and it doesn't leave any like oil, like hand oil buildup on the screen, so it just keeps it from getting cruddy, and it helps
I
me
got
it
you.
helps my hand move a little
Okay.
freer.
Okay. So on holiday was just mentioning about Stardew. It's got very retro vibes. Fighting in the mines.
Yeah.
Very yeah. I like I said, I will probably return to it at some point, most likely. Right now, I'm playing through what's the name of it? The very subversive retro homage RPG. Gosh, did I skip last week? Is that why I'm forgetting? It's oh man, it released in like 2017, I think. Can't even remember the game I'm playing, and that's part of the problem of the if I'm doing a playthrough, like I stream once a week, and I'm like, oh, where am I in the story, and what happened, and
Yeah, for
I love
sure.
if they do like those. That's another thing about game design. If they would just include like a brief little like, okay, you just destroyed this boss, and now you're on your way to this village, and oh, cool, thanks.
Little
Um,
refresher. That's what's nice about the
Undertale,
about
sorry, Undertale.
newer games do have the journals and stuff like that, the codex, so you can see where you've been and what you've been doing and things like that. So that's one of those quality of life improvements that we got to see as games matured.
Yeah, and I just thought of one of the things I like about a game is when you can play a game within a game.
Oh, mini games. Little
Yeah.
mini games inside it, like the snowboarding game in FF7, or
hmm Just switching it up, giving you a little bit of variety. Like,
yeah.
so I'm playing. I need to get back to it. But I was playing Night in the Woods. It's kind of an indie, cutesy, but not for kids. Sort of
Okay.
teen angsty. Return from college in a sleepy fall town, and there's murder, intrigue, and awkwardness with growing up, and all. It's cool, man. But in there you can fire up your computer and play this little like retro like dungeon crawler, and I love stuff like that, man. One of my early recollections of that was there was a game on Super Nintendo called Legend of Mystical Ninja here in the States.
Yeah, I
And
remember that game.
yeah, and you could go into the arcade and play like Gradius, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I used to love that. I was like, this is so freaking cool. Like, how meta, right? It's like, I'm playing the character that's playing the game in the game, you know. But yeah, I love those little Easter eggs and
Yeah, that's
whatnot,
great.
you know.
All right, Alucard for sure is done. We can zoom out a little bit and get kind of a good little pixelated view of him. Now, I don't do pixel art. It's not what I normally do, but this is a fun little change of pace, and we get to see a little, kind of see how things come together. That's interesting. We're almost out of time. It's almost 10:30. That's almost our cutoff. So let's end here with let's do a little bit of a list. So I want your top 5 games before 2000. Top 5 games that came out before 2000 that kids, people that are just now able to drink would have to have you say your gaming education requires you to play this game. These games. These are games that you feel
Could be arcade or
whatever you want. You want console, you want arcade. It's fine, either one. I'll give you a few of mine. So
okay.
FF6 is always going to be in any list I make about any video games ever. So that'll always be there. I would honestly say, do you remember? Do you remember the game Strider?
Yes.
Wasn't that game so
Strider.
great? That game
So
was
cool.
so great. So I think
Yes.
Strider, because it's a platformer. It's one of those games where
the first 8 mega cart for the Sega Genesis.
Yeah, that game was so great.
Yeah.
That's one that I think would be a lot of fun. That everyone should play. I think Mario Kart is one of those games that everyone should play. I think I'm going to go real old school. I'm going to say Qbert, just because it's that's what we had when we were that young. It's a puzzle game, but it's so simplistic. and it's so bizarre. And I even have him. If you look at the overlay, I've got Hubert up there on the top.
Yes, I see him. Or her, or it.
You saw it. And I would say Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, because I've got that game has a huge place in my heart, and I'm all over the place with these games, but they were so fun.
Wait, A Link to the Past. That was the SNES one.
That's the SNES one. Yeah,
I absolutely loved that one, and
I adore that game.
Yeah, that was just man, like seeing as how SNES was one of my favorite all-time systems, I think that's where my mind immediately went with it, and I was thinking, Super Metroid.
Oh, dang it. That should have been on my list. Dang it. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Now, here's one that I guess I think I need to play it again. But I remember it being like really like sort of I loved it back in the day, and that was Bionic Commando.
Yeah.
And like the climactic like shooting Hitler in the face and melts, and I
remember that. Oh, yeah.
Here's one: Contra: The Alien Wars.
Alien Wars? Not the original.
Contra: The Alien Wars.
Okay.
That was the SNES Contra.
Right.
Freaking amazing.
Wait, was that not Super C?
No, the Super C was on NES.
Super C was on NES? Was it really? Okay.
Yeah. Contra 3, The Alien Wars.
Okay.
That's the and it was cool because like you could like dual wield and so shoot your weapons, two different weapons at the same time. It had mode 7 scaling, like plane flying in and bombing everything like napalm. Man, the mode 7 effects I have a special affinity for. I mean, I was inclined to say Super Castlevania, but I'll probably go with the Symphony of the Night.
Symphony of the Night, yep.
So what's that? So I got Super Metroid, Link to the Past,
Symphony of the Night, Bionic Commando.
Bionic Commando.
And Contra Alien Wars.
There you go.
There you go. That's a nice spread.
That's no pun intended.
No. That's going to be our time for tonight. Oh my gosh. John, thanks so much for coming and hanging out and just kind of reminiscing even just about all these games that I want to go back and play so many more of them now again. And, oh man, I love just the concept and the fact that nowadays, if we want to, we have the ability to go back and play a lot of these games again in a much simpler in an easier fashion. We don't necessarily have to go and buy the cartridges and things like that. These games are available. You can even just download the ROMs if you really have to. Definitely recommend playing a lot of them. John, do me a favor and shout out to everybody listening. Where can we find you? Where are you on the internets, and when's your next show?
Okay, yeah. So part of the Glue crew, Geeks Like Us fam. I am known as Retronathan in my stream on Fridays, 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. And like I mentioned earlier, that's where I play the retro games or homages to retro gaming. Like right now, I'm playing through Undertale. I also periodically will do broadcasts as Collector the Hordarian, and that's where I just do unboxings, as I call them, because I feel like that's more epic. And I just buy stuff and I forget what I bought, and it's kind of fun to rediscover it on a stream, an impromptu stream. So,
sure.
That's through the Geeks Like Us Twitch, like what we're on now. Yep. We'll upload our videos to YouTube as well. Come check us out on Facebook and Twitter, and I don't know if we do the other social medias, but
we're on Insta. We've got an Insta going.
Oh, we're on Insta. Okay, yeah. Somebody else running that show. I don't know.
All right. Thanks so much for being here, being on the show tonight. Everyone,
thank you.
If you're new to Geeks Like Us, go over and check out our Discord. We have channels for all the different shows that we have on and lots of different conversation topics. You can jump in, be part of the conversation. We also have a Patreon. You can jump over there and you can get some great new benefits for being a part of the crew. So make sure you stop in and see if anything might work for you. I'm here every other Wednesday night for Drawing Conclusions. Usually I've got some influencer or someone part of the community that wants to come in and talk about some IP that we are all passionate about. So no matter what happens, we're always going to be unapologetically enthusiastic about these ideas, these games, these movies, these books, these video games, whatever it is. That's what you'll find here, and we always try to do a little bit of fun art while we're doing it, just because it's something fun to look at. You can find me online. I'm at Randall_Hampton, basically everywhere. And again, you can go and check out my book, The Little Game Master. Check it out on Amazon or over at my site, randallhamptonart.com. Thanks so much for being here tonight. This has been Drawing Conclusions. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you guys all again soon. Have a great night.
At all.